All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at something pretty interesting, leasing vacant land, specifically for recreational use. It's relevant if you own land, sure, but also if you just love getting outdoors.
Yeah, it's a neat concept. It really can be a win-win, like you said. Landowners get some income, maybe from land that's just sitting idle.
Uh-huh.
And, people who are into hunting, fishing, hiking, even four-wheeling, they get that private space they're often looking for.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack a source we looked at. It's an article from the AHLA blog, and pull out the really essential things you need to know. Because look, the idea sounds great,
It does.
but doing it right, making it safe and fair for everyone, that takes some real planning.
Absolutely. The source doesn't just give a list. It digs into the critical factors you need for a solid, secure lease arrangement.
Okay, let's get into it then. Say you're the one looking to lease the land for fun. What does this source say you should be looking for? What makes a piece of land, suitable?
Well, the main point is the land itself has got to fit what you want to do on it. It's not just any vacant lot. You have to look at the specific features.
Okay, like what kind of features?
So first off, it mentions diverse terrain and features. Think about land that has a mix, maybe some woods, some open fields, perhaps a pond or a stream.
Right.
That variety supports different kinds of activities. Different game might live in the woods versus the fields, or you might find better hiking trails in one area.
Makes sense. So if you want to hunt turkey and maybe do some fishing, you need a place that offers both possibilities. It makes the lease more valuable for you.
Precisely. And tied to that, if hunting or just watching wildlife is your thing, the article really stresses checking for the presence of wildlife. Are there actual signs, tracks, droppings, game trails?
Like playing detective a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And for fishing, well, obviously you need water. Ponds, lakes, rivers. The article flags checking if there are actually fish, how easy it is to get to the water. But what's really key here, and maybe easily missed, is the permits. You need to know if you need special permits and understand the local fishing rules before you lease.
Good point.
Yeah.
Just because you can get to the water doesn't mean you can automatically fish there legally. Yeah. What about just exploring, hiking, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so for hiking, or maybe ATVs, existing trails are a huge bonus, saves you the trouble.
Right.
But if there aren't trails, you've got to look at the terrain itself.
Yeah.
Is it okay to make trails? Can you do it safely without causing, erosion problems? Needs to be sustainable.
Got it. And it's not always just about what you can do there, is it?
No, exactly. The article brings up natural beauty and privacy. That's a big driver for a lot of folks. They want that feeling of escape, being secluded, away from roads and neighbors.
Yeah.
So how pretty is it? How private does it feel? That's often just as important as the activities themselves. It's the whole experience.
Okay, so you've checked out the land. It seems perfect for your plans. Now, the article really shifts gears to something crucial, something you absolutely have to focus on: prioritizing safety.
Yeah, this part is huge, and for good reason. Accidents happen, right? So being proactive, thinking ahead about safety is key for both the person leasing and the landowner. The source lists several specific things to check.
Okay, walk us through them. What are the big safety checks?
First up, clearly marked boundaries. This is fundamental. You need to know exactly where the property lines are to avoid accidentally trespassing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially if there's hunting involved, you don't want to wander onto someone else's land.
Exactly. That can cause huge problems, legal issues, even dangerous situations. The article suggests using fences, signs, or maybe even sharing GPS coordinates so everyone's clear.
Makes sense. What's next?
Next is identifying hazards. You got to actively look for potential dangers. Things like old open wells, maybe unstable old sheds or structures, eroding banks or cliffs, even patches of poisonous plants like poison ivy or oak.
Things that might not be immediately obvious.
Right. And the source stresses it's not just seeing them. You need to talk to the landowner about how these hazards are marked or, mitigated. Get that sorted before you sign the lease.
So it's about the plan to deal with the danger, not just finding it.
Precisely. Then there's safe points of entry and egress. Basically, how do you get onto and off the property safely? Are the gates okay? Secure but usable? Are the roads or trails leading in well maintained? Think about different weather. Can you still get in and out if it rains heavily or snows?
Right, accessibility in all conditions.
And maybe something you don't think about until you need it, emergency access. Could an ambulance or fire truck actually get onto the property if there was a serious emergency?
Wow, yeah, that's a really important consideration, not just getting in, but getting help in.
Absolutely. Which leads right into communication systems. Cell service can be really spotty in remote areas, we all know that. So the article advises checking the reception, but also having a backup plan, maybe a satellite messenger, a check-in procedure, and know where the nearest emergency services are, how to contact them.
It's so easy to just assume your phone will work everywhere.
Yeah.
Bad assumption out in the sticks sometimes.
Totally. Now, if hunting is allowed, hunting safety zones are critical, non-negotiable. The source insists on having clear, safe backstops.
What does that mean exactly? A safe backstop?
It means knowing what's behind your target. Ideally, a solid hill, an earthen bank, something that will stop a bullet safely, not just open air or worse, towards a neighboring property.
Got it.
And also keeping safe distances between different hunting stands or zones. You don't want hunters too close to each other. There are often regulations about minimum distances.
That level of detail is important. What about things like campfires?
Fire safety is covered too. You need to know the local rules about open flames or campfires. Are they even allowed? If so, are there designated safe spots like established fire pits? And is there water or a fire extinguisher nearby? Especially vital during dry seasons, obviously.
Wow, okay. So safety isn't just one thing. It's like layers, boundaries, hazards, access, communications, specific activity rules like for hunting, fire. It's a lot to think about.
It really is. And actually building right on that point about access, the article spends a bit of time on the importance of points of entry. Why designated entry points matter so much.
Okay, it seems straightforward, but why does the source call it out specifically?
Well, for a few key reasons. First, controlled access. Defined entry points help the landowner manage who's coming and going. It deters people who shouldn't be there, trespassers, poachers.
Right, keeps it more secure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It also ties back directly to safety, like we were just saying. Using maintained roads or trails for entry reduces the risk of getting lost, running into unexpected hazards off trail, or having accidents because the access is difficult.
So the designated path is actually a safety feature itself.
In a way, yes. It also helps minimize environmental impact. By keeping foot traffic, vehicles concentrated on specific routes, you prevent damage to other areas. Less wear and tear on sensitive spots.
Makes sense. Less random trampling everywhere.
And finally, it just helps with landowner management. It's easier for them to monitor what's happening, check if people are following the lease rules about access times or vehicles, and generally keep tabs.
Okay, so we've covered finding the right land, making super sure it's safe, and controlling how people get onto it. Once you've got all that groundwork laid, how do you make the arrangement official? This brings us to the lease agreement itself and building the foundation, the landowner-lessee relationship.
Yeah, this part is really about the nuts and bolts of the agreement, which protects both sides. The landowner sets the rules for safe, ethical use, and the lessee needs to really understand and agree to those terms.
So what are the absolute must-haves in that lease agreement, according to the source?
Well, the article is really clear. Details matter. Specificity prevents arguments later. So it means restating those clearly marked property lines, maybe even designated zones for different activities if needed. If hunting is part of it, the lease has to say exactly which animals you can hunt, the methods like archery only or firearms allowed, and any limits, quotas, specific seasons.
Right, you can't just vaguely say hunting's okay. Got to be specific.
Exactly. And the access rules need to be spelled out too. Which entry points are allowed? Any rules for using roads on the property, speed limits, types of vehicles allowed. It reinforces that point about controlled entry.
It all seems to link together.
It does. And
Yeah.
critically, the source really hammers this home. The lease needs liability clauses and insurance requirements. This is probably one of the most important parts for protecting both the landowner from lawsuits and the lessee if something goes wrong.
Insurance. Yeah,
Yeah.
you flagged that.
Yeah.
Let's spend a moment here because the article makes it sound absolutely essential.
It really is presented that way. But before we dive deep into insurance, the source also mentions other basics for the relationship. Define the lease duration clearly. How long does it last? What's the payment schedule? Are there terms for renewal, for long-term planning?
Right.
And maybe less tangible, but still crucial, is fostering a good relationship. Open communication, mutual respect for the land. It really should be seen as a partnership.
Sounds like the golden rule applies. Treat the land like you'd want your own property treated.
That's a great way to put it. Which brings us perfectly to that huge point, the necessity of vacant land insurance. The article is emphatic this is vital protection for everyone involved.
Why is it so critical? You might think vacant land is relatively low risk, right?
Not really, not when people are actively using it, especially for things like hunting or riding ATVs. There are inherent risks. The main benefit the source highlights is liability protection for the landowner. If someone gets hurt on the property or if their property gets damaged while they're there, the landowner could be sued, even if they weren't directly involved in causing the accident.
Oh,
So, vacant land insurance is that safety net. It can cover legal defense costs, medical bills, settlements. It's huge.
okay, so, like, if a lessee is hiking, trips on a hidden tree root, breaks their leg, the landowner's insurance could potentially cover that situation.
That's exactly the kind of scenario it's meant for. But the article also mentions protection for the lessee, too. The landowner's policy covers their liability, but what if the lessee needs coverage?
How so?
Well, what if the lessee's actions cause damage? Say they crash an ATV and damage a fence. Or what if their own gear, maybe an expensive tree stand or camping equipment, gets stolen or damaged on the property? Their own insurance might be needed.
Ah, okay, so the person leasing might need their own policy as well.
It's definitely something to consider. The source talks about types of coverage. The landowner's policy is mainly about liability. The lessee might look into, say, personal property coverage or even specific activity insurance, like coverage tailored for hunting clubs or ATV use, depending on what they're doing.
Hmm.
And here's a key point the article makes. Landowners often require the lessee to show proof that they have their own liability insurance. It's becoming a standard part of the lease agreement.
That actually sounds like a really smart move for the landowner. Spreads the responsibility a bit.
It does. It helps ensure everyone has some skin in the game, financially speaking. And finally, the article touches on the cost benefit. Yes, insurance costs money. It's an expense.
Right.
But compare that premium to the potential cost of a lawsuit. Legal fees alone can be crippling. Medical bills, settlements. The insurance cost is tiny in comparison. It's an investment in security, really. Peace of mind.
This has been super practical, really drilling down into those key takeaways from the AHLA blog piece. We've walked through how you evaluate land for recreational leasing, the absolute critical need to prioritize safety planning, why those designated entry points are actually management tools.
And the core parts of building that solid landowner-lessee relationship through the lease itself.
And wrapping up with the crucial role of vacant land insurance for protecting everyone.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that a really well-thought-out lease covering all these points is the foundation for making this work well for everybody. It's about setting clear expectations up front and, being ready for things that might go wrong.
Absolutely. This deep dive really highlights the potential here: income for landowners, amazing access for recreationists. But maybe the real aha moment from this source, the thing to really think about, is just how much that potential relies on everyone involved taking responsibility. Responsibility for safety, for clarity in the agreement, and for basic mutual respect. It's not just renting land. It's more like a partnership built on trust and clear rules, making sure that land can be enjoyed safely and responsibly.